In Silicon Valley's gleaming TechVantage tower, a brilliant software architect was about to face corporate betrayal. What started as a routine Monday morning took a shocking turn when they came face to face with a new CEO's discriminatory agenda. Chen wasn't your typical tech employee. For 8 years, she had spent her life building revolutionary AI systems from the ground up, known for her elegant code architecture that competitors couldn't replicate. When she encountered Derek Hawthorne declaring that women don't code, during an all-hands meeting, she had no idea she was walking into a carefully orchestrated elimination. Maya's dignified response to her forced resignation would lead to consequences that would shake the entire company. What began as gender-based discrimination would become a masterclass in irreplaceable expertise. The tech industry would never be the same after one woman proved that dismissing talent based on prejudice could bring a $50 million deal, and an entire company, to its knees. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The security scanner beeped its familiar welcome as Chen's keycard passed through the reader. But something felt different the moment she stepped into TechVantage Corp's gleaming lobby. The usual Monday morning energy, developers clutching, coffee cups like lifelines, product managers huddled in animated discussions, seemed muted, replaced by an undercurrent of uncertainty that made her skin prickle with unease. Maya had spent 8 years navigating these polished corridors, watching the company grow from a scrappy startup to a Silicon Valley powerhouse. She knew every corner, every hidden conference room where the real decisions happened, every coffee machine that actually worked. This place had become more than her workplace. It was the architecture of her adult life, built line by line, algorithm by algorithm, until she could navigate it with her eyes closed. But today, something was wrong. She swiped her card at the elevator bank leading to the executive floors, privilege she'd earned through years of technical excellence and late-night debugging sessions. The red light blinked mockingly. Access denied. Maya frowned, swiping again. Same result. A knot of anxiety twisted in her stomach as she tried the main elevator bank, which granted her access to the lower floors but nothing above the 15th level. System glitch, she murmured to herself, though the explanation felt hollow even as she said it. Maya had learned to trust her instincts about systems, both technical and human, and right now, every instinct was screaming that this was intentional. The elevator ride to the 12th floor felt longer than usual, filled with an oppressive silence that seemed to press against her chest. When the doors opened, she was greeted by an even stranger sight. Empty desks where her female colleagues should have been. Priya's workstation, usually cluttered with sticky notes and half-finished prototypes, sat pristine and cleared. Jessica's dual-monitor setup had been reduced to a single screen, her personal photos gone. Maya! James Kim's voice cut through her growing concern. Her former mentee, now a lead developer in his own right, approached with quick, nervous steps. His usually calm demeanor was fractured, replaced by an energy she'd never seen before. "Did you get the email about the all-hands?" "No," Maya said slowly, pulling out her phone. Her inbox showed the message, sent at 6 a.m. Mandatory. All-hands meeting, 9 a.m., new directions for TechVantage. The sender was someone she didn't recognize. Derek Hawthorne, Chief Executive Officer. "When did we get a new CEO?" Maya asked, though pieces were already clicking into place. The board had been in closed sessions for weeks, whispers of leadership, transition, and strategic realignment floating through the executive floors she apparently could no longer access. James's expression darkened. Over the weekend, they announced it in an email blast yesterday evening. Robert stepped down, effective immediately. He lowered his voice. "Maya, I think you should know. There have been some changes. HR's been making adjustments." The conference room was packed beyond capacity, with developers and product managers standing along the walls. Maya found herself squeezed between junior engineers, no longer in her usual seat at the table reserved for senior architects. The symbolism wasn't lost on her. Derek Hawthorne commanded attention the moment he entered, tall, impeccably dressed, with the kind of confident smile that belonged on magazine covers. He moved through the room like he owned not just the company, but everyone in it. His handshake was firm, his eye contact unwavering, and Maya could see why the board might have been impressed. He looked like their idea of what a tech CEO should be. "Good morning, team," Derek began, his voice carrying easily through the room without amplification. "I know change can be unsettling, but I'm here to lead TechVantage into its next phase of growth. We're going to streamline operations, focus on what matters most, and build a culture of excellence that attracts the best talent." Maya felt a chill at the phrase best talent, though she couldn't yet articulate why. "Now I believe in merit-based success," Derek continued, his smile never wavering. "The days of diversity quotas and feel-good initiatives are over. We're going to promote and retain based purely on capability and results." His gaze swept the room, lingering on the remaining women with what Maya could only describe as dismissive assessment. "Let's be honest," Derek said, his tone becoming more conversational, almost conspiratorial. "Some roles are better suited to certain temperaments. Women don't code. Not really. They might write scripts or handle front-end work, but the deep architectural thinking, the complex problem-solving that drives innovation, that requires a different kind of mind." The room fell into stunned silence. Maya felt as if someone had reached into her chest and squeezed her heart until it stopped beating. Around her, she could see the shock on her colleagues' faces. Some horrified, others nodding in unconscious agreement, a few looking uncomfortable but saying nothing. "Of course, we value all contributions," Derek added quickly, as if realizing he'd gone too far. "But we need to be realistic about where people can best serve the company's interests." Maya's hands clenched into fists beneath the table. 8 years of architectural design, of solving problems that had stumped senior male developers, of mentoring teams and building systems that powered the company's success, all dismissed with casual certainty by a man who probably couldn't write. A Hello World program. As Derek outlined his restructuring plans, eliminating redundant positions, and optimizing team composition, Maya began to understand the scope of what was happening. This wasn't just about her, or even just about the women in the room. This was about rewriting TechVantage's culture, erasing years of progress toward inclusivity and collaboration. When the meeting ended, Maya remained seated as others filed out, their conversations hushed and worried. She watched Derek work the room, shaking hands with male department heads while barely acknowledging the women who approached him. Maya. Sarah Martinez appeared beside her, face pale and drawn. Maya's manager looked like she'd aged 5 years overnight. "Can we talk? Privately?" They found an empty conference room, and Sarah immediately locked the door, an action that sent Maya's anxiety spiking even higher. "You need to know," Sarah said without preamble. "Your name came up in Derek's preliminary review. He's identified several positions as non-essential to the company's core mission." "Non-essential," Maya repeated flatly. "I built half the systems that keep this place running. I know that. You know that. But Derek..." Sarah trailed off, rubbing her temples. "Maya, he specifically asked about you. Questions about your leadership potential, and whether your role could be optimized. I tried to defend you, to explain your contributions, but he cut me off, said he'd already made his assessment." Maya felt something cold and sharp settle in her stomach. "And you didn't push back? In that meeting just now, when he essentially said women can't code, you said nothing?" Sarah's face flushed. "Maya, I have to be strategic here. I have a team to protect, And if I come across as confrontational or difficult. Maya stood abruptly. Right, because standing up for your people makes you difficult. That's not, Sarah started, but Maya was already moving toward the door. Maya, wait! Sarah's voice cracked with desperation. I'm trying to work within the system. If I lose my position, who's going to advocate for the team? Maya paused with her hand on the door handle. And if you don't advocate for us, what's the point of having the position at all? The hallway felt different when Maya emerged from the conference room. Conversations stopped when she passed, eyes following her with a mixture of sympathy and relief. Relief that they weren't in her position. She made it halfway to her desk before James intercepted her. Maya, can we grab coffee? His voice was carefully neutral, but his eyes were pleading. They walked to the break room in silence, James checking over his shoulder twice. When they were alone, he turned to her with an expression of guilt and fear that made him look younger than his 32 years. I should have said something, he began. In there, when he was talking about women and coding. I should have stood up, should have mentioned all your work on the AI architecture, all the times you've saved projects that I couldn't fix. His hands shook slightly as he poured coffee he didn't seem to want. But Maya, I'm terrified. Emma's pregnant. We just bought the house. And if I lose this job? Maya studied his face, the face of someone she'd mentored, encouraged, helped promote through 3 levels of engineering hierarchy. Someone whose wedding she'd attended, whose career she'd invested in. I understand, she said quietly. And she did. That was perhaps the most painful part. She understood exactly the calculations he was making, the systems of fear and dependency that kept good people silent in the face of injustice. But James, she continued, if we don't speak up now, what happens to the next woman who gets hired? What happens to your daughter if she decides she wants to code? James's face crumpled. I know. God, Maya, I know. But I don't know how to fight this without losing everything. Maya nodded, feeling a strange sense of clarity settling over her. She'd spent years believing that merit would be enough, that good work would speak for itself, that the industry was slowly, but steadily, getting better. Derek's arrival had stripped away those comfortable illusions, revealing the fragile nature of progress and the speed with which it could be undone. You don't have to fight it, she said finally, but I think I might. Walking back to her desk, through the increasingly tense office atmosphere, Maya began to see TechVantage with new eyes. The casual conversations between male developers that excluded women, the way credit was distributed for team achievements, the subtle ways that certain voices were amplified while others were diminished. It had all been there before, masked by Robert's well-intentioned policies and her own rising career trajectory. Derek hadn't created these problems. He'd simply removed the thin veneer of politeness that had kept them hidden. As Maya sat down at her workstation and looked at the elegant code architecture displayed across her 3 monitors, systems she'd designed, debugged, and optimized over countless late nights, she realized that her choice was both simpler and more complex than she'd initially thought. She could fight from within, try to outlast Derek's regime and protect what she'd built, or she could prepare for the inevitable, document her contributions, and plan for a future beyond TechVantage's walls. The afternoon sun slanted through the office windows, casting long shadows across her desk as Maya opened a new terminal window and began typing commands that would back up 8 years of architectural genius. She didn't know yet what her next move would be, but she was done being caught unprepared. The quiet clicking of her keyboard was methodical, purposeful, the sound of someone who had finally stopped trusting the system to protect her and had decided to protect herself instead. The quiet clicking of Maya's keyboard continued long after the office had emptied, each keystroke a deliberate act of self-preservation. The building's automated systems had dimmed the lights to their evening setting, casting her workstation in a pool of blue-white glow that felt both isolating and strangely comforting. Here, surrounded by the hum of servers and the familiar syntax of code, she could think clearly for the first time since Derek's poisonous words had shattered her morning. Maya's fingers moved with practiced efficiency across the keyboard, executing commands that would create encrypted copies of every piece of code she'd written, every architectural document she'd authored, every design decision she'd justified in countless code reviews. 8 years of intellectual property flowed across her screens, not just code, but the reasoning behind it, the elegant solutions to problems that had stumped entire teams, the innovations that had quietly revolutionized how TechVantage's systems operated. As the backup processes ran, Maya opened her personnel file through the HR system, access she still retained for now. What she found there made her stomach clench with a familiar mixture of anger and resignation. Her contributions to the flagship AI project, the breakthrough algorithm that had secured TechVantage's latest round of funding, had been systematically minimized in recent performance reviews. Credit that had once been explicitly hers was now attributed to the team, or, more insidiously, to male colleagues who had worked under her direction. The quarterly report from 3 months ago was particularly galling. Her revolutionary approach to neural network optimization, the innovation that had reduced processing time by 40% and saved the company millions in server costs, was described as collaborative refinement of existing methodologies. Meanwhile, James's implementation of her design was praised as innovative problem-solving and technical leadership. Maya leaned back in her chair, the weight of accumulated injustice settling over her like a heavy blanket. She thought about her mother, Chen, who had coded her way through the male-dominated tech landscape of the 1980s and 90s, fighting for recognition that never quite came. Lynn had raised Maya alone after her father's death, working double shifts as a systems programmer while pursuing her computer science degree at night. May, her mother's voice echoed in her memory, using the childhood nickname that meant little sister. Your father always said that our code speaks louder than their prejudice. Build something so elegant, so essential, that they cannot ignore you. Maya's father had died when she was 12, his heart giving out during a particularly brutal crunch period at the startup where he worked. She remembered him hunched over their kitchen table, laptop open, explaining algorithms to her in Mandarin, while her mother prepared dinner. He'd been brilliant, everyone said so, but brilliant in quiet ways that rarely translated to recognition or advancement. The irony was sharp and painful. Maya had followed his advice perfectly. She'd built systems so elegant and essential that TechVantage literally couldn't function without them. And now Derek wanted to eliminate her anyway, simply because her gender didn't fit his vision of what a real programmer looked like. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. How was work today, May? The news mentioned your company's new leadership. Maya stared at the message, unsure how to respond. How could she explain that 8 years of careful career building was crumbling because a new CEO believed women weren't capable of the work she'd been doing since she was a teenager? How could she tell her mother, who had sacrificed so much, to give Maya opportunities she'd never had, that those opportunities might be disappearing? Instead, she typed back, "Interesting changes ahead. We'll talk this weekend." The AI architecture file opened across her largest monitor, thousands of lines of code flowing past in neat, color-coded streams. Maya had designed this system during a 6-month period of inspired problem-solving, working through nights and weekends to create something genuinely revolutionary. The neural network could adapt its own structure based on incoming data patterns, essentially teaching itself to become more efficient over time. It was the kind of breakthrough that should have made her a legend in the AI community. But looking at the code now, Maya realized something that made her blood run cold. The system was far more interconnected than anyone else understood. What appeared to be modular components were actually deeply interdependent. each piece relying on subtle optimizations and edge case handling that existed only in her mind. She had never fully documented these dependencies because she'd assumed she would always be there to maintain them. Derek's plan to eliminate her wasn't just discriminatory, it was catastrophically short-sighted. Maya's fingers flew across the keyboard as she traced the system's dependencies, mapping the invisible connections that held everything together. The primary AI model depended on her custom pre-processing algorithms. The load balancing system relied on her predictive caching implementation. Even the error-handling routines contained optimizations that she'd never formally documented, small improvements that prevented minor issues from cascading into system failures. A new file appeared on her screen. Project Phoenix, Leadership. Transition Notes. Maya's access to the shared drive still allowed her to see this document, though she suspected that oversight would be corrected soon. As she read Derek's preliminary assessment of the technical team, her suspicions were confirmed. Maya Chen, Senior Architect, concerns about cultural fit and leadership potential. Technical contributions appear to be overstated in previous reviews. Recommend transitioning responsibilities to James Kim, reliable, good team player, with support from external consultants as needed. Target. End of Q1. Maya sat back, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. Overstated technical contributions. The man who couldn't distinguish between Python and JavaScript was questioning her technical abilities. She opened a new terminal window and began documenting everything. Not just the code, but the reasoning behind every architectural decision, every optimization, every elegant solution to complex problems. If Derek wanted to eliminate her, she would make sure he understood exactly what he was losing. But as Maya worked, another realization crept into her consciousness. She wasn't just documenting her work for defensive purposes. She was creating a roadmap that would allow her to rebuild these systems elsewhere, to take her innovations to a company that would value them properly. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. Maya had never imagined leaving TechVantage. This place had been her professional home, the laboratory where she'd grown from a junior developer into one of the industry's most talented architects. But Derek's vision of the company's future clearly didn't include her. Maya's phone chimed. With an email notification, the sender was Derek's assistant. Meeting request, tomorrow, 9 a.m., HR Conference Room A. Position Review and Transition Planning. Maya stared at the subject line, her heart hammering against her ribs. Position Review and Transition Planning. The corporate euphemisms couldn't disguise what this was. They were going to fire her. She looked around the office that had been her second home for 8 years. The whiteboard where she'd sketched out breakthrough algorithms still bore faint traces of her work. The coffee mug on her desk, a gift from the team after her first major promotion, sat half-empty next to a photo of her parents on their wedding day. Maya saved her documentation files to the encrypted drive, then composed a careful email to her mother. "Mom, can I come over for dinner tomorrow night? I might need some advice about career decisions." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. As she gathered her things and prepared to leave, Maya caught sight of her reflection in the dark window. She looked tired, older somehow than she had that morning. But there was something else in her expression, a steely determination that reminded her of her mother, of the woman who had refused to let prejudice define her limitations. Derek Hawthorne thought he could simply erase her contributions and push her aside. He was about to learn that Maya Chen's code ran deeper through TechVantage's systems than he could possibly imagine, and that some architectures couldn't be replaced with wishful thinking and gender bias. The elevator doors closed behind her, with a soft whisper, carrying her away from the office where tomorrow everything would change. The elevator doors closed behind her with a soft whisper, carrying her away from the office where tomorrow everything would change. Maya stood alone in the descending car, watching the floor numbers tick downward, each one marking the end of another piece of her professional life at TechVantage. By the time she reached the parking garage, she had already begun mentally preparing for what was coming. The morning arrived gray and cold, San Francisco fog rolling in from the bay like a physical manifestation of Maya's mood. She dressed carefully, her best suit, the one she'd worn to her promotion interview 3 years ago, not out of respect for the company, but as armor. If they were going to dismiss her, she would meet that dismissal with dignity and tact. Maya arrived at TechVantage 30 minutes early, using her remaining access to review the AI system logs one final time. The metrics looked perfect. Response times optimal, error rates minimal, user satisfaction scores in the 97th percentile. Her architecture was performing flawlessly, a fact that made the coming meeting even more surreal. At precisely 9 a.m., Maya knocked on conference room A's frosted glass door. Inside, Derek Hawthorne sat at the head of a polished table that reflected the morning light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Beside him, Monica Walsh from HR clutched a manila folder with the kind of grip that suggested its contents were particularly unpleasant. "Maya, please sit down," Derek said, gesturing to the chair directly across from him. His smile was practiced, professional, and utterly without warmth. "Thank you for taking the time to meet with us this morning." As if she'd had a choice. Maya settled into the offered chair, noting that Sarah Martinez was conspicuously absent, despite being her direct manager. Another signal that this meeting had been orchestrated to minimize resistance. Monica opened the manila folder with theatrical precision. "Maya, we've asked you here to discuss your role at TechVantage and some exciting transition opportunities that have become available." "Transition opportunities," Maya repeated, her voice level. "I see." Derek leaned forward, his expression shifting into what Maya recognized as his concerned mentor persona. "Maya, you've been with us for 8 years, and we truly appreciate your contributions during that time. However, as TechVantage evolves, we need to ensure that our team composition aligns with our strategic objectives. And my role doesn't align with those objectives?" "It's not personal," Derek continued, seemingly oblivious to the contradiction in his statement. "But frankly, I think you might be happier in a more suitable environment, something that better matches your natural strengths and interests." Maya felt a familiar chill at his tone, the same condescending warmth he'd used when declaring that women don't code. "What would you consider my natural strengths, Derek?" Monica cleared her throat, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "What Mr. Hawthorne means is that we're restructuring the technical architecture team to focus on more aggressive innovation cycles. The new structure requires a different kind of leadership profile." "The killer instinct," Derek added, his smile broadening. "The ability to make hard decisions without getting bogged down in consensus building or emotional considerations. It's nothing against you personally, Maya, but women tend to approach these challenges differently, more collaboratively, less decisively." Maya's hands remained perfectly still on the table, though every muscle in her body wanted to react to the casual dismissal of everything she'd accomplished. "I see. And you've reached this conclusion based on my performance reviews, my technical contributions, the feedback from my team?" Derek waved a hand dismissively. "Performance reviews can be influenced by political correctness. What I'm looking at is results and the kind of aggressive leadership we need going forward. James Kim, for instance, shows real promise for this kind of role. Natural technical intuition, strong decisiveness, the ability to command respect from the team." The irony was so thick Maya could taste it. James Kim, whose technical abilities she'd nurtured from his first day as a junior developer. James, who still came to her with complex algorithmic challenges because he trusted her judgment above his own. James, who possessed exactly the collaborative leadership style that Derek claimed to disdain, but who apparently demonstrated natural technical intuition simply by being male. "I understand," Maya said quietly. "And if I choose not to accept this transition opportunity?" Monica's grip on the folder tightened perceptibly. "Well, we're hoping that won't be necessary. We're prepared to offer a very generous severance package, 6-month salary, continued health benefits, and a positive reference letter. All contingent, of course, on signing a standard non-disclosure and non-compete agreement." Maya reviewed the documents Monica slid across the table, scanning the legal language that would prevent her from discussing her dismissal or working for any TechVantage competitor for 18 months. The severance package was indeed generous, probably more than they were legally required to offer, which suggested they were nervous about potential lawsuits. "This is quite thorough," Maya observed, noting the clause that would prevent her from disparaging the company or its leadership in any public forum. "You've clearly put a lot of thought into this transition." Derek's confidence seemed to swell at what he interpreted as capitulation. "We want this to be as smooth as possible for everyone involved. Change is never easy, but sometimes it's necessary for growth." Maya set down the documents and looked directly at Derek. "I have a question about the technical transition plan. My AI architecture handles approximately 70% of TechVantage's core processing load. Have you identified who will be maintaining and optimizing those systems?" "James will be taking point on that, with support from our consulting partners as needed," Derek replied without hesitation. "The documentation should be sufficient for the transition." "The documentation," Maya repeated. "Derek, have you actually reviewed the system architecture, the interdependencies, the optimization, algorithms, the edge case handling protocols?" For the first time, Derek's confidence flickered. "I'm sure James and the team can handle any technical challenges that arise." "You're not irreplaceable, Maya." Maya smiled, a cold, precise expression that made Monica shift uncomfortably in her chair. "You're absolutely right. I'm not irreplaceable. The question is whether you understand what you're replacing me with." She signed the documents with deliberate care, her signature flowing across the resignation letter in elegant strokes that seemed to surprise Derek with their finality. 6 months severance, continued benefits, positive reference. "I assume this is effective immediately." "Well, yes," Monica stammered. "We thought a clean break would be best for everyone." Maya stood, smoothing her suit jacket. "Then I'll clear out my desk and be gone by lunch. Monica, could you email me the details? About benefit transitions and final payroll?" Derek rose as well, extending his hand with renewed confidence. "Maya, I want you to know this wasn't personal. I'm sure you'll find something that's a better fit for your particular skill set." Maya looked at his outstretched hand for a long moment before shaking it briefly. "Derek, I want you to know that in approximately 72 hours, you're going to understand exactly what my particular skill set was worth to this company. I just hope you have a very good relationship with those consulting partners." She turned and walked toward the door, pausing with her hand on the handle. "Oh, and Derek, when the AI system starts throwing critical errors, and it will, you might want to check the optimization algorithms in the neural network pre-processing layer. Just a friendly suggestion from someone whose natural strengths apparently don't include technical intuition." The hallway outside conference room A felt different as Maya walked toward her desk for the final time. Conversations stopped as she passed, her colleagues' faces reflecting a mixture of shock, sympathy, and relief that they weren't in her position. Word traveled fast in tech companies, and everyone could read the writing on the wall. James Kim appeared at her side as she began packing her personal items. "Maya, I heard. I'm so sorry, this is insane." Maya looked up from the box where she was carefully placing her awards and commendations. "James, you're going to be inheriting my responsibilities. Do you feel ready for that?" His face went pale. Maya, I don't know half of what you know about those systems, the pre-processing algorithms alone. You'll figure it out, Maya said gently. You're smarter than you give yourself credit for, and Derek seems very confident in your natural technical intuition. As she packed the last of her belongings, Maya felt a strange sense of liberation mixed with profound loss. 8 years of her life fit into 2 cardboard boxes and a laptop bag. 8 years of innovation, mentorship, and architectural brilliance, reduced to personal effects and encrypted backup files. The elevator carried her down through the building one final time, past the floors where her code hummed quietly in server rooms, maintaining the elegant systems that would soon become someone else's nightmare to understand. Derek Hawthorne thought he had eliminated a problem. In reality, Maya realized with crystalline clarity he had just created a much bigger one. Derek Hawthorne thought he had eliminated a problem. In reality, Maya realized with crystalline clarity he had just created a much bigger one. The elevator doors closed behind her for the final time, sealing her departure from TechVantage Corp. As she walked through the parking garage toward her car, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that she was watching the first domino fall in a sequence that would reshape everything. She was right. 72 hours later, James Kim stared at his monitor in growing horror as TechVantage's flagship AI system began displaying error messages he'd never seen before. It started small, minor processing delays that barely registered in the system, logs. Then came the memory allocation warnings, followed by increasingly frequent timeout errors that made his stomach clench with recognition. This can't be happening, James muttered, pulling up the system architecture diagrams that Maya had left behind. What had seemed like comprehensive documentation now felt woefully inadequate, like trying to repair a Swiss watch with only a picture of its face. The AI pre-processing layer, Maya's revolutionary neural network optimization system, was throwing critical errors every few minutes. Response times that had been measured in milliseconds were now stretching into full seconds. User complaints were already trickling in through customer support channels. James had spent the weekend trying to understand Maya's code, following logical pathways that seemed to spiral into increasingly complex dependencies. Every function called 3 others. Each optimization relied on subtle mathematical relationships that existed nowhere in the formal documentation. Maya's mind had been the living repository of how everything truly worked together. By Monday morning, the trickle of errors had become a flood. James, Derek's voice cut across the development floor with the kind of sharpness that made conversations stop. My office. Now. The walk to Derek's corner office felt endless. James passed the empty desk where Maya had worked for 8 years, her ergonomic chair still adjusted to her height, her monitors still configured with the split-screen layouts she'd preferred. The space looked like a crime scene. Derek's office was a monument to aggressive corporate success, awards from previous companies, photos with tech industry celebrities, and a bookshelf filled with leadership manuals that had clearly never been opened. Derek himself sat behind a massive desk, his expression cycling between annoyance and something that might have been concern. Explain to me, Derek said without preamble, why our flagship product is performing like it's running. On a potato, James opened his laptop, hands trembling slightly as he pulled up the error logs. The AI system is experiencing cascade failures in the pre-processing layer. Response times are up 400%, and we're seeing memory leaks in the neural network optimization routines. In English, James, Maya's code is breaking down, and I don't know why. The admission felt like swallowing glass. The system dependencies are more complex than we realized. What looked like modular components are actually deeply interconnected, and some of the optimization algorithms. James trailed off, realizing he was about to admit that he didn't understand systems he was now supposed to lead. Derek's expression darkened. Are you telling me that Maya sabotaged our systems before she left? No, James said quickly. Nothing was sabotaged. But her code is incredibly sophisticated, more than any of us realized. The optimizations she implemented are elegant but complex, and they depend on mathematical relationships that she never fully documented. So fix it. James stared at Derek, wondering how to explain the situation without sounding incompetent. Derek, Maya's pre-processing algorithms are performing real-time optimization of neural network weights based on incoming data patterns. The mathematics alone would take me weeks to fully understand, and that's assuming I could reverse engineer her implementation without breaking something else. Then bring in consultants, hire contractors. I don't care what it costs. I've already reached out to 3 AI consulting firms. They're all saying the same thing. Without the original architect available for consultation, they'd essentially need to rebuild the entire system from scratch. We're looking at 6 months minimum, probably longer. Derek's face had gone through several shades of red during James's explanation. 6 months? We have the investor presentation next week. Marcus Webb is expecting to see our AI capabilities. Not this. He gestured at James's laptop screen, where error messages continued to cascade past in an endless stream. I know, James said miserably. Derek, I've been thinking. Maybe we could reach out to Maya. I know she signed a non-compete, but consulting arrangements can sometimes... Absolutely not. Derek's voice was flat and final. I will not go crawling back to someone who clearly designed systems to be deliberately obtuse and unmaintainable. Maya Chen is gone, and we move forward without her. James felt something break inside his chest. Derek, Maya didn't design anything to be obtuse. She designed elegant solutions to incredibly complex problems. The fact that we don't understand them doesn't make them deliberately difficult. It makes them sophisticated. Are you questioning my decision, James? The threat in Derek's voice was unmistakable. James looked at his laptop screen, where error counts continued climbing, then back at Derek's expectant face. He thought about Emma, about the baby coming. In 4 months, about the mortgage they'd just signed. No, James said quietly. I'm not questioning your decision. After James left, Derek sat alone in his office, staring at quarterly projections that suddenly seemed very optimistic. The Gatra investor presentation was in 6 days. Marcus Webb and his team would be expecting to see TechVantage's revolutionary AI system performing at peak efficiency, not struggling with basic functionality. Derek pulled up Maya's personnel file, scanning through performance reviews that painted a picture of technical excellence he'd chosen to dismiss. Her innovations had saved the company millions in server costs. Her architecture had enabled the scaling that made TechVantage attractive to investors. Her leadership had built the technical team that Derek was now watching struggle with systems they couldn't understand. But admitting that would mean admitting he'd been wrong about everything, about Maya's value, about women in tech, about his own judgment in eliminating someone whose contributions were apparently irreplaceable. Derek closed the file and reached for his phone. If James couldn't fix this, then James wasn't the right person for the job either. Meanwhile, 3 floors below, Sarah Martinez sat in her office, reviewing the team schedules that no longer made sense. Maya's absence had created a vacuum that affected every project, every deadline, every technical decision that required architectural insight. Sarah had spent the morning fielding increasingly panicked emails from developers who couldn't understand systems Maya had designed. Sarah pulled up Maya's contact information, her finger hovering over the phone number. She'd tried calling twice since the dismissal, only to reach voicemail. Maya had clearly decided to cut all ties with TechVantage, and Sarah couldn't blame her. But as another urgent message appeared in her inbox, this one from the infrastructure team reporting database optimization failures, Sarah realized that pride and protocol were luxuries they could no longer afford. She began typing an email. Maya, I know you probably don't want to hear from anyone at TechVantage right now, But we need to talk. The AI system is failing, and I think you're the only one who can help us understand why. Sarah stared at the draft for several minutes before hitting send. Outside her office window, the San Francisco skyline glittered in the afternoon sun, indifferent to the crisis unfolding in TechVantage's gleaming tower. In server rooms throughout the building, Maya's code continued its slow-motion collapse, each failed optimization and cascading error a testament to the irreplaceable expertise that Derek Hawthorne had so confidently dismissed. The reckoning had begun. The reckoning had begun, but Maya Chen was blissfully unaware of the chaos unfolding in TechVantage's server rooms. For the first time in 8 years, she was writing code purely for the joy of it, surrounded by the vibrant energy of Rachel Thompson's startup in a converted warehouse in Oakland. "Pass me that monitor cable," called out Zara, a brilliant 24-year-old machine learning engineer who reminded Maya of herself at that age, hungry, passionate, and unafraid to challenge conventional wisdom. Maya smiled as she handed over the cable, watching Zara configure a distributed training setup that would have made TechVantage's infrastructure team weep with envy. Rachel's company, Nexus AI, operated out of a space that perfectly captured the scrappy startup aesthetic Maya had almost forgotten existed. Exposed brick walls were covered with whiteboards filled with equations and architectural diagrams. Developers worked at standing desks assembled from reclaimed wood and adjustable legs, their laptops connected to an impressive array of mismatched monitors. The coffee was terrible, the furniture was uncomfortable, and Maya had never felt more at home. "Maya, can you look at this training pipeline?" asked David, a soft-spoken data scientist who specialized in natural language processing. "I'm getting weird convergence patterns in the transformer layers." Maya leaned over his shoulder, studying the loss curves displayed on his screen. The familiar puzzle-solving part of her brain engaged immediately, tracing through the mathematical relationships that governed neural network training. Within minutes, she'd identified the issue, a subtle bias in the batch normalization that was causing the model to converge on local optima. "Try adjusting the momentum parameter in your optimizer," Maya suggested, her fingers flying across David's keyboard as she implemented a quick fix. "And maybe add some label smoothing to prevent overconfident predictions." David's eyes widened as the loss curves immediately began showing healthier convergence patterns. "How did you see that so quickly?" Maya shrugged, already moving on, to help another team member with a distributed computing challenge. This was what she'd missed most about pure technical work, the immediate feedback loop between problem and solution, unencumbered by corporate politics or personality conflicts. Rachel appeared beside her with 2 cups of the infamous coffee. "You know," she said, watching Maya effortlessly solve problems that had stumped her team for days, "I'm starting to think TechVantage's loss might be the best thing that ever happened to us." Maya accepted the coffee gratefully, though she made a face at the first sip. "Rachel, your coffee is genuinely terrible." "I know. It's part of our lean operating philosophy." Rachel grinned, then her expression grew more serious. "But seriously, Maya, watching you work these past few days has been incredible. You've accelerated our development timeline by at least 6 months. It feels good to just solve problems again," Maya admitted. "No meetings about the political implications of technical decisions, no having to justify why an elegant solution is better than a brute force approach. Just code and mathematics and systems that work." "Have you thought about what comes next?" Rachel asked gently. "I mean long-term?" Maya was about to respond when a commotion near the entrance caught their attention. James Kim stood awkwardly in the doorway, looking desperately out of place in his TechVantage polo shirt and khakis among Nexus AI's eclectic dress code. "Maya?" he called out, his voice carrying across the open workspace. "I need to talk to you. Please." The energy in the room shifted palpably. Rachel stepped closer to Maya, her expression immediately protective. "I thought you blocked all TechVantage contacts." "I blocked work numbers and emails," Maya said quietly. "James has my personal cell. Maya walked toward James, conscious of her new colleagues watching the interaction with undisguised curiosity. James looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, rumpled clothes that suggested he'd been working around the clock, and the kind of desperate exhaustion Maya recognized from her own worst debugging sessions. "What are you doing here, James?" Maya's voice was carefully neutral, though she could guess why he'd come. "The AI system is failing," James said without preamble, his voice cracking slightly. "Maya, everything is falling apart. The pre-processing. Algorithms are throwing critical errors. Response times are through the roof, and I can't figure out why. I've been staring at your code for 4 days straight, and I'm missing something fundamental." Maya felt a complex mixture of vindication and sympathy. "Have you tried bringing in external consultants?" 3 different firms. They all said the same thing. Without the original architect, they'd need to rebuild everything from scratch. 6 months minimum. James ran his hands through his hair. "Maya, the investor presentation is in 3 days. Marcus Webb is expecting to see our AI capabilities performing at peak efficiency. And Derek? What does Derek say about bringing in external help?" James's expression darkened. "Derek refuses to acknowledge that there's a problem he can't solve by throwing more junior developers at it. He's convinced that you deliberately designed the systems to be unmaintainable." Maya laughed, a sharp sound with no humor in it. "Of course he is, because it's easier to blame sabotage than admit he eliminated someone whose work he didn't understand." "Maya, please." James's voice dropped to a whisper. "I know I don't deserve your help. I know I should have stood up for you, should have spoken out when Derek was spewing his garbage about women and coding. But Emma's pregnant, and the mortgage, and— James." Maya's voice was gentle but firm. "I understand why you stayed silent. I don't like it, but I understand it." Rachel appeared at Maya's shoulder, her presence a reminder that Maya had options now, that she wasn't trapped in TechVantage's toxic ecosystem. "Maya, you don't owe them anything." "I know," Maya said, still looking at James. "But tell me exactly how bad it is. What's the scope of the failures?" James pulled out his laptop, showing Maya error logs that made her wince with recognition. The cascade failures were exactly what she'd worried about. Complex interdependencies breaking down without the institutional knowledge to maintain them. The memory optimization routines are failing because the garbage collection algorithms can't keep up with the neural network's dynamic weight adjustments, Maya observed, scanning through the logs. And the pre-processing layer is throwing errors because someone modified the input validation without understanding how it affects downstream processing. "Can you fix it?" James asked desperately. Maya closed the laptop and looked at her former colleague, someone she'd mentored, encouraged, and watched grow into a capable developer. Someone who had stayed silent when she needed support, but who was now facing the consequences of that silence. "James," Maya said finally, "I need you to understand something. Fixing these errors isn't just about writing better code. It's about understanding the entire system architecture, the mathematical relationships between components, the optimization strategies that make everything work together. It's about the kind of deep technical knowledge that Derek thinks women don't possess." "I know," James said miserably. "Maya, I know how valuable you are. I've always known." Maya looked around Rachel's startup space, at the diverse team of brilliant engineers who valued her contributions without question, at the environment where her expertise was celebrated rather than dismissed. "I'll think about it," Maya said, finally. "But James, if I help, it won't be to save TechVantage. It'll be to save the team. People like you who are going to take the blame for Derek's incompetence." As James left, Rachel turned to Maya with a concerned expression. "You're actually considering helping them?" Maya watched James's retreating figure, thinking about the $50 million investment deal, about the team members who would suffer if the company failed, about Derek Hawthorne learning that sometimes consequences have consequences. I'm considering teaching them exactly what they lost when they decided I wasn't worth keeping. I'm considering teaching them exactly what they lost when they decided I wasn't worth keeping, Maya said, watching James's retreating figure disappear. Through the warehouse entrance. The words hung in the air between her and Rachel, heavy with possibility and danger. Rachel studied Maya's face with the intensity of someone who had known her since their graduate school days at Stanford. Maya, I've seen that look before. You're not just considering helping them, you're strategizing. Before Maya could respond, her phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown number. She almost declined it, but something made her answer. Maya Chen. Ms. Chen, this is Sarah Martinez. I know you probably don't want to hear from anyone at TechVantage right now, but we need to talk. Maya stepped away from the bustling workspace, finding a quieter corner near Rachel's glass-walled office. Sarah, I thought I made it clear that I was moving on. The AI system is collapsing, Sarah said without preamble, her voice strained, with exhaustion. Maya, I've been watching our performance metrics for the past 48 hours, and it's like watching a slow-motion car crash. James is drowning, Derek is in complete denial, and our investor presentation is in 2 days. And you think I should care about this because… Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Because despite everything that happened, I know you care about the work, about the team, about the innovations we built together over 8 years. Maya felt a familiar pang at Sarah's words. She did care, more than she wanted to admit. TechVantage might have betrayed her, but the technical achievements, the elegant systems, the breakthrough algorithms, those were still hers. What exactly are you asking, Sarah? I'm asking if you'd consider coming back as a consultant, short-term, just to stabilize the systems and get us through the investor presentation. We're prepared to offer you a very generous consulting rate, 3 times your previous salary. Maya almost laughed. 3 times? Sarah, 48 hours ago, Derek was convinced that my contributions were overstated and that James could handle everything with some consulting support. What changed? Reality, Sarah said grimly. Maya, the pre-processing layer failures are cascading through every system that touches the AI architecture. Customer complaints are up 400%. We had a potential client cancel a demo yesterday because the response times were so bad, they thought we were having server issues. Through the warehouse windows, Maya could see James sitting in his car in the parking lot, his head in his hands. The sight stirred unexpected sympathy. Sarah, even if I wanted to help, which I'm not saying I do, Derek made it very clear that he doesn't want me anywhere near TechVantage. Something about moving forward without people who design deliberately obtuse systems. Sarah's sharp intake of breath was audible through the phone. He said that? Maya, your systems aren't obtuse. They're sophisticated. The fact that we're struggling without you proves how elegant and essential your work was. Was that you finally finding your voice, Sarah? Maybe it was, Sarah said quietly. Maya, I know I failed you. I should have pushed back harder, should have defended you and the team. I was scared of losing my position, scared of being labeled as difficult or confrontational. But watching everything fall apart these past few days, I realized that my silence didn't protect anyone. It just enabled Derek's destructive decisions. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 8 years of shared professional history. Sarah's admission was exactly what she'd wanted to hear during that horrible meeting in Conference Room A, but it came too late to undo the damage. What are you offering specifically? Consulting contract, 2 weeks minimum, renewable if needed. Full system access, your own workspace, direct reporting to the board rather than Derek, and Maya. Sarah's voice took on an urgent tone. Victoria Sterling wants to meet with you. She's been asking pointed questions about the technical failures and their relationship to recent personnel changes. Victoria Sterling. Maya knew the name, self-made tech entrepreneur, sold her company for 9 figures, joined TechVantage's board as part of their diversity initiative. If Victoria was asking questions, things were more serious than even Sarah was letting on. "I'll think about it," Maya said finally. "Maya, we need an answer by tomorrow morning. The investor presentation is Thursday, and if we can't demonstrate stable AI performance—" "I said I'll think about it, Sarah." After ending the call, Maya returned to where Rachel was pretending not to eavesdrop while reviewing code on her laptop. "So," Rachel said without looking up, "they're offering you stupid money to come back and save their asses?" 3 times my previous salary for a 2-week consulting gig. Rachel whistled low. "That's serious, we're completely fucked money." "Rachel, what would you do?" Rachel finally looked up from her laptop, her expression thoughtful. "Honestly, I'd make them pay, not just financially, but systemically. If you're going to save their company, make them change their company." "What do you mean?" "You have leverage now, Maya. Complete leverage. They need you more than you need them, and they know it. So don't just fix their technical problems, fix their cultural problems too." Before Maya could respond, her phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, but the area code was local. Maya Chen. "Ms. Chen, this is Victoria Sterling from TechVantage's Board of Directors. I believe we need to have a conversation." Maya's pulse quickened. Victoria's voice carried the kind of quiet authority that came from decades of successful business leadership. "Ms. Sterling, I was just speaking with Sarah Martinez about a potential consulting arrangement." "Good. Maya, may I call you Maya?" "I've been reviewing the technical metrics from the past week, and I'm seeing some very concerning patterns. Performance degradation, system instabilities, cascading failures in critical infrastructure. As someone who's built and sold tech companies, I recognize the signs of architectural expertise walking out the door." "I was pushed out the door, Ms. Sterling. I'm aware of the circumstances of your departure, and I'm not happy about them. Maya, I joined TechVantage's board specifically to help build a more inclusive, merit-based culture. Derek's decisions regarding personnel seem to contradict those values." Maya felt a spark of hope mixed with wariness. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A meeting. Tomorrow morning, before you make any decisions about the consulting arrangement. I want to understand exactly what happened, what we've lost, and what it would take to not just fix our immediate problems, but prevent them from happening again." Maya looked around Rachel's startup space, the collaborative energy, the diverse team, the environment where her expertise was valued without question. Then she thought about TechVantage, about 8 years of architectural innovation slowly degrading, about Derek's smug certainty that women don't code. "Ms. Sterling, if we meet, I want to be very clear about something. I'm not interested in just patching systems and walking away. If TechVantage wants my help, we're going to talk about more than technical problems." "I was hoping you'd say that," Victoria replied, and Maya could hear the smile in her voice. "Because I think we have more to discuss than just system architecture." As Maya ended the call, she realized that the balance of power had shifted in ways that Derek Hawthorne couldn't possibly understand. He'd tried to eliminate her, but instead, he'd created exactly the conditions that would force him to confront the value of what he'd thrown away. The courtship had begun, but this time, Maya would be setting the terms. The courtship had begun, but this time, Maya would be setting the terms. She stood in TechVantage's lobby the next morning, watching Derek Hawthorne's reflection in the polished elevator doors as he approached with the kind of forced smile that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. "Maya," Derek said, extending his hand with practiced corporate warmth. "Thank you for coming in. I hope we can put the past behind us and focus on moving forward together." Maya shook his hand briefly, noting how his grip lingered a moment too long, a dominance display that revealed his discomfort with the reversed power dynamic. "Derek, I'm here at Victoria's request to discuss the technical situation and potential solutions." Of course, Derek said, his smile never wavering despite the obvious dismissal in Maya's tone. I think you'll find we're very motivated to reach a mutually beneficial arrangement. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt surreal. Just 10 days ago, Maya's keycard couldn't access these floors. Now she was being escorted by the CEO who had eliminated her position, heading to a meeting where she held all the leverage. Conference Room A, the same room where Derek had dismissed her contributions and questioned her technical abilities, had been transformed into a negotiation space. Victoria Sterling sat at the head of the table, her silver hair pulled back, in a practical bun, and her attention focused on a tablet displaying what Maya recognized as system performance metrics. Sarah Martinez sat to Victoria's right, looking like someone who hadn't slept in days. Maya, Victoria said, rising to shake hands. Thank you for taking this meeting. I've been looking forward to our conversation. Victoria Sterling was smaller than Maya had expected, but her presence filled the room with quiet authority. She wore a simple black blazer over dark jeans, the uniform of someone successful enough to ignore traditional corporate dress codes. Please, sit, Victoria continued, gesturing to the chair directly across from Derek. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Maya facing the man who had dismissed her, with the board member who was questioning his judgment holding the position of authority. Before we discuss potential consulting arrangements, Victoria began, I want to understand exactly what happened during the restructuring process. Maya, can you walk me through your departure from the company? Derek shifted, uncomfortably. Victoria, I think we should focus on solutions rather than rehashing. Derek. Victoria's voice was soft but carried unmistakable steel. I asked Maya a question. Maya looked directly at Derek as she spoke, watching his expression change as she recounted the merit-based restructuring meeting, his comments about women, lacking the killer instinct for technical leadership, and his assertion that her contributions had been overstated in previous reviews. I see, Victoria said when Maya finished. And Derek, you felt comfortable making these assessments despite having no technical background yourself? I was relying on team feedback and performance metrics, Derek replied, his confidence clearly shaken. Leadership decisions can't be based solely on technical contributions. Which technical team members provided feedback suggesting Maya's contributions were overstated? Victoria interrupted. Derek's pause was telling. Well, the feedback was more observational, about collaboration styles and leadership potential. From whom, specifically? Another pause. I prefer not to name individuals, but the consensus was... There was no consensus, Sarah interjected, her voice stronger than Maya had heard it in years. Derek, you made unilateral decisions based on personal bias, not team feedback. Every technical lead I spoke with considered Maya irreplaceable. Maya felt a surge of vindication mixed with sadness. This was the Sarah she'd hoped would speak up 10 days ago. Victoria turned her attention to the tablet. Let's talk about the technical situation. James Kim provided me with system performance data from the past week. Maya, can you help me understand what we're looking at? Maya accepted the tablet and reviewed the metrics with professional detachment. Response times had degraded by over 400%, error rates were climbing exponentially, and memory utilization patterns suggested cascading failures throughout the AI architecture. The pre-processing optimization algorithms are failing because they depend on real-time mathematical relationships that aren't documented in the formal specifications, Maya explained. When those algorithms fail, they create memory leaks that compound over time. The neural network weights become increasingly unstable, which affects every downstream process. And this is fixable? Victoria asked. Absolutely, but it requires understanding the interdependencies between systems, knowledge that exists primarily in institutional memory rather than documentation. Derek leaned forward. Maya, we appreciate your expertise, and we're prepared to offer a very generous consulting arrangement to get these systems stabilized." "What kind of arrangement?" Maya asked, though she suspected she already knew. 2 weeks, renewable if needed, at 3 times your previous salary rate," Derek said, his confidence returning as he moved into familiar negotiation territory. "Full system access, dedicated workspace, whatever you need to get the AI architecture performing optimally again." Maya set down the tablet and looked around the room, at Derek's expectant face, Sarah's desperate hope, and Victoria's careful attention. "That's an interesting offer," Maya said finally. "But I'm not interested in just fixing immediate problems and walking away. If I'm going to save TechVantage's AI architecture, we need to talk about systematic changes." "What kind of changes?" Victoria asked, leaning forward with obvious interest. Maya pulled out a document she'd prepared the night before. "Comprehensive policy reforms, mandatory bias training for all leadership positions, transparent promotion criteria with technical review components, and a formal commitment to diversity in hiring and retention, with measurable goals and accountability metrics." Derek's expression had shifted from confident to alarmed. "Maya, that seems like a significant overreach for a technical consulting arrangement." "Derek," Maya interrupted, her voice carrying new authority, "let me be very clear about something. Your AI architecture is failing because you eliminated the person who understood it best. Your technical team is struggling because you dismantled institutional knowledge in favor of gender-based assumptions. Your company is facing potential investor rejection because you prioritized bias over competence." She stood, placing both hands on the table as she leaned toward Derek. "I'm offering to fix your immediate crisis and implement changes that will prevent you from making the same mistakes again. But I'm not interested in Band-Aid solutions that allow you to continue operating under the delusion that women don't code." The room fell silent. Derek's face had gone through several shades of red, and Maya could see him struggling between his pride and the company's survival. "Maya," Victoria said quietly, "what would you need to feel confident that these changes would be meaningful and lasting?" Board oversight of the diversity initiatives, with quarterly reviews and public reporting. Derek's explicit acknowledgement that technical merit includes the collaborative leadership and architectural innovation that he dismissed. And a formal role in rebuilding the technical culture, not as a consultant, but as a permanent member of the leadership team. "You want my job," Derek said flatly. "I want a job where my contributions are valued and where other women won't face the discrimination I experienced," Maya replied. "Whether that threatens your position depends on how committed you are to learning from this situation." Victoria's tablet chimed with an incoming message. She glanced at it and her expression grew serious. That was Marcus Webb's office. He's moved the investor presentation to tomorrow morning. He wants to see our AI capabilities performing at optimal levels, or he's considering alternative investment opportunities. The weight of the deadline settled over the room like a physical presence. Derek's confident facade finally cracked completely. "Maya," he said, his voice strained, "what do you need from me to make this work?" Maya looked at the man who had dismissed her expertise, questioned her value, and eliminated her position based on gender-based assumptions. Now he was asking for her help, and she held the power to set conditions that would reshape TechVantage's culture. "I need you to understand that when you said women don't code, you were talking about someone whose code is currently keeping your company from complete technical collapse," Maya said quietly. "And I need you to commit to ensuring that no other woman at this company will have to prove her worth twice as hard for half the recognition." Derek nodded slowly, the gesture of someone who had finally understood the true cost of his prejudices. "Then let's get to work," Maya said, settling back into her chair. "But Derek, this is the last time I save something you tried to destroy." "Then let's get to work," Maya said, settling back into her chair. "But Derek, this is the last time I save something you tried to destroy." The words hung in the conference room air like a binding contract, witnessed by Victoria Sterling's approving nod and Sarah Martinez's visible relief. Within an hour, Maya was back at her old workstation, though the familiar space felt different, now. Her monitors had been restored to her preferred configuration, her ergonomic chair adjusted to the exact height she'd used for 8 years, but the dynamics had fundamentally shifted. She was no longer an employee hoping for recognition. She was a consultant with explicit board backing and the leverage to demand systematic change. James Kim appeared at her shoulder, laptop in hand, and dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights wrestling with code he couldn't fully understand. "Maya," he said, his voice carrying equal parts relief and professional humiliation. "I've documented every error pattern I could identify, but I'm missing something fundamental about how the optimization algorithms interact with the memory management systems." Maya accepted James's laptop and began scrolling through error logs that told a story of cascading failures. "James, you weren't missing anything fundamental. You were missing 8 years of institutional knowledge that I never properly documented. That's on me, not you." She pulled up the AI architecture's core modules, her fingers automatically navigating through directory structures that she'd built from the ground up. "Look here," she said, pointing to a seemingly innocuous function call. "This pre-processing routine doesn't just clean input data, it's performing real-time statistical analysis to optimize neural network weight distributions. When it fails, the entire learning system becomes unstable." James leaned closer, watching. Maya traced through code pathways that revealed the elegant complexity of her original design. "I thought this was just standard data validation." "It started as data validation," Maya explained, opening a terminal window and beginning to type diagnostic commands. "But over 2 years, I evolved it into something much more sophisticated. The system learns from its own processing patterns and adjusts optimization parameters in real time. It's why our AI performance was consistently better than competitors, not just because of better algorithms, but because of adaptive efficiency improvements." As Maya worked, other members of the technical team began gathering around her workstation. Developers who had watched the system failures with growing panic now observed with fascination as she systematically diagnosed and repaired problems they'd spent days trying to understand. "The memory leaks are happening because the garbage collection routines can't keep up with the dynamic weight adjustments," Maya continued, her hands flying across the keyboard as she implemented fixes that were both immediate and elegant. "But the real issue is that someone modified the input validation protocols without understanding their relationship to downstream processing." She pulled up a recent commit log and pointed to changes made just 3 days after her departure. "Here. Someone tried to optimize the input parsing by removing what they thought were redundant checks. But those checks weren't redundant. They were preventing malformed data from triggering memory allocation cascades." Maya's fixes were surgical in their precision. Rather than band-aid solutions, she implemented repairs that addressed root causes while maintaining the sophisticated optimization logic that made the system revolutionary. Each correction revealed another layer of the architectural elegance that Derek had dismissed as deliberately obtuse. "Maya," said Elena Vasquez, a senior developer who specialized in distributed systems, "could you walk us through the load balancing algorithms? We've been seeing weird traffic distribution patterns that don't match any standard load balancing logic." Maya smiled, the first genuine expression of professional satisfaction she'd felt since returning to TechVantage. "That's because it's not standard load balancing. Watch this." She opened a visualization tool that displayed real-time system performance across TechVantage's server infrastructure. As her fixes took effect, the chaotic patterns of the past week began resolving into smooth, efficient distributions that seemed almost organic in their optimization. The load balancer doesn't just distribute traffic. It predicts processing requirements based on incoming data patterns and pre-allocates resources accordingly, Maya explained. "It's like having a system that can see 30 seconds into the future and prepare for what's coming. James shook his head in amazement. Maya, this is incredible. Why didn't you ever document these innovations in detail? Because I didn't think I'd ever leave, Maya said quietly. And because the mathematical relationships are complex enough, that documenting them properly would have taken months away from actual development. I always figured I'd do comprehensive documentation during a future code review cycle. As the afternoon progressed, Maya's systematic repairs began showing dramatic results. Response times dropped from several seconds back to milliseconds. Error rates plummeted to near zero. Memory utilization stabilized at optimal levels. The AI system that had been failing catastrophically that morning was now performing better than it had in the week before Maya's departure. But Maya wasn't just fixing problems, she was teaching. Every repair came with detailed explanations of the underlying logic. Every optimization was documented with mathematical proofs and implementation. Notes. She was ensuring that the institutional knowledge wouldn't walk out the door again. Maya, Elena said, watching performance metrics climb toward optimal ranges. This is like watching someone resurrect a patient and then explain how every organ system works. That's exactly what it is, Maya replied, implementing the final set of critical repairs. Derek thought he could amputate a major organ and have the body continue functioning normally. But AI architecture isn't modular in the way traditional software is. It's more like a living ecosystem where every component affects every other component. By late afternoon, the crisis had been resolved. The AI system was not only stable, but performing at levels that exceeded previous benchmarks. Maya had implemented optimizations during her repairs that improved efficiency even beyond the system's original specifications. Victoria Sterling appeared at Maya's workstation as the technical team was reviewing the restored performance metrics. Maya, I've been monitoring the system status reports, Victoria said. The improvement is remarkable. But I'm curious, how long would it take to train a team to maintain these systems without you? Maya considered the question carefully. With proper documentation and training, 6 months to get them to basic maintenance competency, 2 years to develop the kind of architectural understanding needed for major improvements or crisis response. And how long would it take to rebuild these systems from scratch using external consultants? 18 months minimum, probably. Closer to 2 years, and the result wouldn't be as sophisticated as what we have now, Maya said. The mathematical optimizations alone would require recreating years of research and testing. Victoria nodded slowly. Derek learned an expensive lesson about the difference between replaceable and irreplaceable talent. Maya saved her work and began the process of creating comprehensive documentation for every repair she'd implemented. Victoria, I want to be clear about something. What I've done today isn't just about fixing immediate problems. I've implemented improvements that will prevent these specific failures from happening again. But maintaining and evolving this architecture requires ongoing expertise, not just crisis management. I understand, Victoria said. And Maya, I want you to know that the board has been discussing your proposal for systematic reforms. Derek's resistance to acknowledging the scope of today's crisis has been illuminating. As Maya prepared to leave TechVantage that evening, she looked back at the development floor where her former colleagues were reviewing the documentation she'd created, studying the systems she'd repaired, and beginning to understand the true scope of what they'd nearly lost. Tomorrow's investor presentation would showcase an AI architecture performing at peak efficiency, powered by innovations that Derek had dismissed as the work of someone who lacked technical intuition. The irony was poetic, but Maya took no pleasure in it. She had saved TechVantage's flagship technology, but more importantly, she had demonstrated the cost of bias-driven decision-making in terms that even the most prejudiced executive could understand: dollars, performance metrics, and investor confidence. The technical resurrection was complete. Tomorrow would determine whether Derek Hawthorne was capable of a personal one. The technical resurrection was complete. Tomorrow would determine whether Derek Hawthorne was capable of a personal one. Maya arrived at TechVantage's headquarters an hour before the investor presentation, watching through the lobby's floor-to-ceiling windows as Blacktown cars deposited Marcus Webb and his investment team at the building's entrance. Marcus Webb was exactly what Maya had expected. Silver-haired, impeccably dressed, with the kind of sharp-eyed attention that came from decades of evaluating tech companies' promises against their actual capabilities. His team moved with the efficient purpose of people whose time was measured in millions of dollars per hour. Maya made her way to the executive conference room where the presentation would take place. The space had been transformed into a showcase, with multiple monitors, displaying real-time performance metrics from the AI system she'd spent yesterday resurrecting. The numbers were beautiful. Response times in the low milliseconds, error rates approaching zero, throughput rates that exceeded even the most optimistic projections. Derek stood at the front of the room, rehearsing his presentation with the kind of nervous energy that suggested he understood exactly how much was riding on the next hour. He wore his most expensive suit and his most confident smile, but Maya could see the tension in his shoulders, the slight tremor in his hands as he adjusted his slides. Maya. Victoria Sterling appeared beside her, looking calm despite the stakes. Are you ready for this? The technology is ready, Maya replied. The question is whether Derek is ready to acknowledge who made it possible. Marcus Webb entered the conference room with his team, and Maya found herself relegated to a chair along the wall, positioned as support staff rather than the architect whose innovations would determine TechVantage's future. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Gentlemen, welcome to TechVantage, Derek began, his voice carrying the practiced enthusiasm of someone who had given this presentation dozens of times in his mind. Today, I'm excited to show you the revolutionary AI architecture that represents the future of intelligent computing. Derek's slides were polished, his delivery smooth, his technical explanations surprisingly sophisticated for someone who had dismissed the system's original architect. But as he moved into the detailed technical discussion, Maya could see him beginning to struggle. Our neural network optimization approach leverages real-time weight distribution algorithms to achieve unprecedented efficiency gains, Derek said, clicking to a slide that displayed Maya's mathematical innovations without attribution. Marcus Webb leaned forward. Can you walk us through the specific mathematical relationships that enable these optimization gains? The pre-processing algorithms seem particularly sophisticated. Derek's pause was barely noticeable, but Maya caught it. The pre-processing layer utilizes advanced statistical analysis to predict optimal neural network configurations based on incoming data patterns. Yes, but how specifically? Marcus pressed. What's the mathematical foundation for the ride? Predictive analysis? How do you prevent overfitting while maintaining adaptability? Derek's confident facade began to crack. Well, the mathematical foundations are complex. The implementation involves advanced machine learning techniques that he was floundering, using generic technical language to avoid admitting he didn't understand the systems he was presenting. Maya watched Marcus Webb's expression shift from interest to skepticism as Derek's explanations became increasingly vague. Mr. Hawthorne, Marcus said finally, I'm having difficulty understanding how your team achieved these performance metrics. The architectural approach seems fundamentally different from anything we've seen in the market. Who designed these algorithms? Derek's face flushed slightly. The AI architecture was developed through collaborative team efforts, with input from our senior technical staff and external consulting partners. Maya felt Victoria's eyes on her as Marcus Webb's questions became more pointed. The investor clearly understood that Derek's explanations weren't matching the sophistication of the technology being demonstrated. I'd like to understand the technical leadership behind these innovations, Marcus continued. Could we speak with the architect who designed the core optimization algorithms? Derek's pause stretched long enough to become uncomfortable. Our technical lead, James Kim, can address any specific implementation questions. Actually, Victoria Sterling interrupted, her voice cutting cleanly through Derek's evasion. I think you should meet the actual architect of our AI system. Maya Chen designed and built the core architecture that's delivering these performance results. The room's energy shifted palpably as Victoria gestured for Maya to join the presentation. Derek's expression cycled through surprise, anger, and resignation in the space of a few seconds. Maya stood and moved to the front of the room, accepting the presentation remote from Derek's reluctant grip. Mr. Webb, I'd be happy to walk you through the technical innovations that enable our AI system's performance advantages. For the next 20 minutes, Maya delivered a masterclass in technical communication. She explained the mathematical foundations of her optimization algorithms, demonstrated the real-time adaptation capabilities of her neural network architecture, and showcased the elegant efficiency gains that her pre-processing innovations made possible. Marcus Webb's questions became increasingly sophisticated as he recognized the depth of Maya's expertise. Ms. Chen, the predictive resource allocation approach is remarkable. How did you solve the computational complexity issues that typically limit real-time optimization? Maya's response involved advanced mathematical concepts that left Derek looking completely lost, but which clearly impressed the investment team. She wasn't just explaining existing technology. She was revealing innovations that represented genuine breakthroughs in AI architecture. This is exceptional work, Marcus said when Maya finished her technical deep dive. Ms. Chen, what's your role in TechVantage's future development plans? Maya looked at Derek, then at Victoria, before responding. That's an excellent question, Mr. Webb. Until last week, I was TechVantage's senior architect. Today, I'm here as a consultant helping to stabilize systems that began failing after my departure. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus Webb's expression shifted to one of sharp interest as he processed the implications of Maya's statement. I see, Marcus said slowly, his gaze moving between Maya and Derek. And TechVantage's plans for retaining the architect of their most valuable technology asset? Derek opened his mouth to respond, but Victoria spoke first. That's exactly what we're working to resolve, Mr. Webb. Maya's expertise is clearly essential to our continued innovation and growth. Marcus Webb nodded, his decision made. TechVantage's technology is impressive, among the best AI architecture we've evaluated. But our investment decisions aren't just about current capabilities. They're about sustainable competitive advantages and the teams that create them. He looked directly at Derek. I'll be very interested to see how you resolve your technical leadership structure, Mr. Hawthorne. Ms. Chen's innovations represent exactly the kind of breakthrough thinking that drives successful investments. As the meeting concluded and Marcus Webb's team prepared to leave, Maya realized that the presentation had accomplished something beyond securing investment. It had publicly established the true source of TechVantage's technical innovations and forced a reckoning with the consequences of Derek's discriminatory decisions. The question now was whether Derek could overcome his pride long enough to acknowledge what everyone in the room already understood, that TechVantage's future depended on recognizing and retaining the expertise he had tried to eliminate. The question now was whether Derek could overcome his pride long enough to acknowledge what everyone in the room already understood, that TechVantage's future depended on recognizing and retaining the expertise he had tried to eliminate. 6 months later, Maya Chen stood in the same conference room where Derek had once dismissed her contributions. But everything had changed. Maya, the Q3 performance metrics are remarkable, Victoria Sterling said, reviewing the quarterly board presentation on her tablet. AI system efficiency is up 40% from pre-restructuring levels. Customer satisfaction has reached all-time highs, and our technical team retention rate has improved dramatically. Maya nodded, looking out at the development floor through the conference room's glass walls. The space buzzed with collaborative energy that felt fundamentally different from the tense atmosphere of Derek's brief tenure. Women and underrepresented minorities now comprised nearly 40% of the technical staff, recruited through the inclusive hiring initiatives Maya had implemented as Chief Technology Officer. "The diversity metrics are just the beginning," Maya said. "When you create an environment where different perspectives are valued, the technical innovations follow naturally. Our AI architecture improvements over the past 6 months have exceeded what we accomplished in the previous 2 years." Derek sat at the far end of the table, his role diminished to VP of Strategic Partnerships, a position that kept him away from technical decisions while allowing him to maintain some dignity. His transformation had been painful but necessary. The man who had once declared that women don't code now reported to a woman whose code powered the company's most valuable innovations. "Maya," Sarah Martinez said, entering the conference room with a tablet displaying recruitment metrics. "The MIT recruiting event was incredibly successful. We have 15 outstanding candidates for internship positions, and 12 are women or underrepresented minorities." Sarah had evolved into Maya's strongest ally in implementing cultural change, channeling her guilt over past inaction into fierce advocacy for inclusive practices. Her management style had shifted from conflict avoidant to strategically bold, and her team's performance had improved accordingly. James Kim appeared in the doorway, carrying a laptop with evident excitement. "Maya, you need to see the latest benchmark results from the neural network optimization system. The adaptive learning algorithms are performing even better than our projections." Maya smiled at James, who had grown into his technical leadership role with proper mentoring and support. His guilt over his earlier silence had motivated him to become one of the company's most vocal advocates for inclusive culture, and his technical skills had flourished under Maya's guidance. "The benchmark results are excellent," Maya said, "but what I'm most proud of is the team that produced them." She looked around the conference room at faces that reflected TechVantage's transformed culture, Sarah's renewed confidence, James's technical growth, Victoria's satisfied approval, even Derek's grudging respect for what had been accomplished. "6 months ago, Derek told me that women don't code," Maya said quietly. "Today, some of the most innovative code in Silicon Valley is being written by the diverse team we've built here. That's not just a technical achievement. It's proof that our industry's future depends on recognizing talent regardless of who possesses it." Through the conference room windows, Maya could see her team collaborating on the next generation of AI innovations, their diverse perspectives creating solutions that would have been impossible under Derek's narrow vision of technical excellence. The architecture Maya had built was more than code. It was a blueprint for sustainable innovation in an industry that had too often confused prejudice with merit. TechVantage's success had become a model for other tech companies, proving that inclusive cultures didn't just support social justice, they drove technological breakthroughs. Maya Chen had not just saved her code, she had rewrote the culture that would nurture the next generation of innovations. The woman who had been dismissed for lacking killer instinct had proven that the real killer instinct was the courage to build something better. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.